I'll just start here. Okay. And what we have done is, because it's not like exactly like Cisco, where there is Cisco Press books available. Okay. So what happens here is, like, Palo Alto has not made any such Palo Alto Press. So what we have done is, we have made a lab workbook. Okay, which has two volumes, volume one, volume two. Okay, and has a lot of practicals. Okay, so when doing lab, uh, I'll not perform all the labs from here. It contains too many labs. Some of them are actually not exactly from the Palo Alto curriculum. Okay, some of them are outside of the Palo Alto curriculum. Like, we have included even things like how to configure OSPF, how to configure BGP in the lab workbook. Okay, because sometimes it comes in handy for people who are working on a production network. Just a second, okay? Just hold it. Yeah. So what I was saying is, like, we have this Palo Alto lab workbook in which we have included all the even the basic practicals, starting from how to configure a host name all the way to advanced next generation firewall features. Okay. So another thing what we have done is, we have made a notes handout for you guys. All the slides that I'm going to cover, okay, here, this is around 400 slides. Okay. So the hard copy of that we are giving to you already in the form of notes handout. Okay. Now, basically, if you are going to go for the certification exam, okay, whether later or sooner, whatever time you choose, basically you need minimum and mandatory, the theory that you should remember is minimum this much. Okay? If you don't remember this much, uh, it will be very hard for you to clear the certification exam. We have included a lot of things here, like, uh, if you see, somewhere we have included some diagrams, somewhere we have included even configuration options. Okay, so I'll not get into the details right now, but point is, like, you should, lot of times when people create notes, it becomes hard to make note of configuration steps, because the things are in graphical user interface here. So a lot of things, it becomes hard to draw everything. Okay, so this acts as a reference point for your notes. Okay, and we have tried to kind of consolidate a lot of Palo Alto documentation from different sources, different trusted sources, into this notes handout. Okay, so this includes a lot of theory. Okay, plus some labs as well, like where to go for this, where to go for that. Okay, so that's what we have included. You will also get a third thing, Palo Alto PCNSE study guide. Okay. This is an official book from Palo Alto, but the thing is, it's not written in a way like you guys have Cisco Press. Okay, So it's kind of like still they Palo Alto is in the phase of having these proper books for people for certification, but they have started with this thing. So we give you a hard copy of this. So this is what you get from study material point of view. Okay, and I'll just start here now. Now, regarding like some people sometimes ask me like what things are we going to cover in the class? Okay, uh, it's all mentioned on the website, but I'll just clarify for everyone to be on the same page. Doesn't matter whether you open Delhi or Pune. Okay. Now, if you go to this course outline, these are kind of the highlighted points here. We'll start with the basic introduction of Palo Alto Networks, certifications, and like next generation firewall platform architecture. How does it work? We'll start with the initial configuration, then like configuring interface options, host name, setting passwords and creating usernames and stuff like that. Then we'll go into security and net policies. Okay. Most likely, it is going to take well around 5 to 6 hours. I think probably 8 hours for us to cover all this. Okay, and then somewhere here it will take another 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours for discussing security policies, NAP policies. Then we have these app ID, content ID things, which are basically the core or the heart and soul of Palo Alto, which they brand a lot and market a lot in uh, to advertise their firewall. So this is their trademark feature. We'll discuss those. Okay. Then there is URL filtering. Okay. And if you are coming from the Cisco background, I'll give you a perspective. What happens here is like starting from beginning and starting from when they started with developing their product. Okay, Palo Alto has not taken the approach like Cisco. Okay, like Cisco had taken an approach where they used to make a lot of products for different things. Like you use, you know, ASA for firewall things, and then if you want email security appliance for email filtering and stuff. Then if you want web filtering for URL filtering and stuff like that, then you have WSA. They have not taken that approach, and kind of like the founder of Palo Alto, Nirzuk, he kind of states that their motto to their motto is to have a product which has everything in a single box solution. Means like if you talk about like firewall features, they are all in the this Palo Alto firewall. If you talk about URL filtering, that also happens. If you talk about some functionality of ICE, if you know what ICE is from Cisco, uh, in this you create profiles of like endpoints, like what kind of things should be in the endpoint before you allow them to join the network. So they have created here HIP profiles, okay, so that you can have a network admission control mechanism uh, in the firewall, built into the firewall. And they even say that everything that you will require even in future will try to push that into the same box. So they've kind of taken a single box approach, and which has been good for them, as like a lot of other companies have now followed this same process of developing the security product. So that's why all these things, like some of you, if you are not familiar with Palo Alto, you might be wondering like this kind of thing works in WSA in Cisco, but everything works here in the same box. And then we'll talk about we'll integrate user ID. Okay, Wildfire is another sandboxing solution from Palo Alto. Then there is Global Protect, VPN, remote access VPN solution from Palo Alto. Okay. Then site-to-site VPNs, and finally, I'll cover some certification tips and tricks while during the class, throughout the class. Okay, fine. That's like the high-level course overview. Okay, what we are not going to cover. Okay, we are not going to cover Panorama here. Panorama is kind of the solution which is used if you have a lot of Palo Alto firewalls. Then if you want to have a single point to maintain all these firewalls, that happens using Panorama. Okay. The reason for this is that the cost for licensing and everything is too high for typical Indian student willingness of paying. It we That's why we have tried to not touch this. Like, I can discuss theoretically, but the thing is we are not going to do any labs in which I'll use Panorama to push configurations onto the file. Okay. Now so if anybody has any questions, like, are we going to cover this, or are we going to cover that, you can ask them right away, right now. Okay.
Sir, this is Arjun.
Yeah.
Can this session be recorded or something?
No, as of now, we don't have anything like that. Like, officially, we don't do that.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
See, I'll
But
clarify one.
sometimes even I mean, if we are not able to attend the training, is it possible to request for a single day?
Yeah, you can let the whosoever you are in touch with, you can let them know. There are
Uh,
many parallel batches. Like, even in weekend right now, there are some batches running. So we can work on something if you miss something.
okay,
See,
okay, fine.
that brings me to one more, expectation that I want, that I have from you. Okay, I'll tell you the worst thing about online training. Okay, is uh, you are not in front of me. Okay, since you are not in front of me, problem is if you if you are not honest in the sense, like, see, uh, all of you guys might be familiar with all the meetings that you attend for office, right? When video is not on, okay, when the meeting is on mute, everybody are or most of the people are, like, on their own, doing something else, and passively, just uh, attending the meeting, right? So preferably, I'd like complete honesty with you. Okay, I'm not saying like keep yourself unmuted all the time, but behave as if you are unmuted all the time. Okay, behave as if the video is on. I'll behave as if I'm looking at you. Okay, so that it's not like maybe I'm training you on a topic and you are out there somewhere to fetch water or tea, or maybe make tea while you are in kitchen, looking at the screen of your mobile, maybe. Okay, so preferably attend with you know full consciousness, just focused to this training. Okay, uh, or else it will become difficult because things are a lot integrated. Okay, and I find, like, online training, that's the main thing that sometimes is is very different than a classroom training session. Because in a classroom training session, like, while I'm training, you cannot get up and go out and drink water while the topic is running. Most of the times people will wait for a break to happen. Okay, but in an online training, you can take the mobile, maybe in the washroom with you, and while you're, so like, uh, preferably when you attend training, and also don't get up just 5-10 minutes before the training. Okay, I'm just giving you a general recommendation. I know you guys know it, but uh, get up well before the training time. Okay, I'm sure most of you might be just at home. Okay, so get up well before time. Uh, stay fresh when you are attending training. Okay, if you follow all of these things honestly, the results of training will be very good. Okay, fine. So let's start with a little basic information about Palo Alto Networks. In fact, they uh, have changed their logo and color scheme of logo as well. Recently, we still have not updated that in the content. Okay, so see, Palo Alto Networks, where did it come from? Okay, there is this guy named Nirzuk. Okay, why I'm including this is so that you get a feel of like why I should study Palo Alto. Okay, now if you look at this guy Nirzuk, okay, his whole career has been into security. Like, he's a guy with a lot of gray hair and a lot of experience into security. Okay, like he basically founded this company NetScreen. If you know, Juniper acquired this company later. Okay, uh, he also was founder of OneSecure. Okay, which kind of brought this concept of IPS. Before this, as they claim it, okay, uh, before this, mostly people used to have devices based on the intrusion detection system, not preventing the attacks. Okay, and also he was working with Checkpoint. Okay, basically the story goes something like he had an extraordinary idea about a firewall that should do this, that, and he discussed with the Checkpoint management team, but they said, you know, uh, no, we are fine with what we are doing. So he left the organization. Then, gradually he has come to a place where he has founded a complete rival of Polo, Checkpoint. Okay. Also, see, I'll sometimes just try to give you an example mentioning a specific product of a different vendor, so that if you guys are familiar with one of the vendors, it's easier to understand some concepts. Okay, so see, Palo Alto made this new things called App ID, User ID, Content ID. Okay, and lot of people think that, okay, these kind of things, like, once you understand, you will be like, okay, these kind of things were in the Checkpoint firewall, if you know Checkpoint firewall. But they've kind of taken a different approach, so it's not exactly like the way it is in Checkpoint. Okay, also, preferably, I recommend people that don't fall in love with a particular vendor. Okay, I've seen a lot of technical guys, what they do is they become lawyers of a particular vendor, like, okay, Cisco is the best, or Palo Alto is the best, or Checkpoint is the best, or that. Preferably, I'll try not to get into those kind of discussions, but uh, see, I'll discuss some mixed things, like what is different compared to a Checkpoint, so that you have a basic idea, like architecturally what is difference between a UTM and a next generation firewall. Okay, so that you have a better idea. Okay, so this is something we'll spend well around 2 hours minimum on each of them, and specifically Content ID, we'll spend around I think 4 hours. Okay, studying this. So I'll not get into explaining all of them right now. It's just that, with App ID, basically they have, uh, they try to identify what application you are using. Okay, like from the OSI model point of view, the firewall goes till application layer to do deep packet inspection to find out what really you are trying to access. Okay, now applications, and App ID can be very granular. If you look at that, uh, it can be so much granular in a way that what you can do is you can allow somebody to open Facebook but restrict them from doing Facebook chat. Okay, these kind of features are available, and I'm not saying like Palo Alto is the only vendor having these features, but they were kind of the first to bring these kind of features. Okay, so next thing, uh, I'd like to introduce you to is, this Gartner Magic Quadrant. Okay, now what is this? Okay, uh, I tell people that, take it as a career advice as well, or as, lot of IT people, okay, people who are working in different infrastructure things, uh, they sometimes get very interested in one particular vendor and stop thinking about where the market is going. Okay, like Gartner is a company which does market surveys from for various technical things, like, this is the Magic Quadrant for enterprise network firewalls. Okay, they do it for all different things, like they do it for meeting solutions, they do it for uh, uh, collaboration solutions, they do it for various different things, like even server operating systems and everything. Okay, now what they do is they make this quadrant of like challengers, leaders, visionaries, and niche players. Okay, and they make it based on two things. Okay, they make it based on like ability to execute, like can the company execute what they have in their vision, or completeness of vision, how well they were able to complete that vision. Okay, now, and the thing here is, uh, if you are working on a security product or a firewall whose name is not here, like this is old, like October 2018, you can search for the latest one on Google. But if you're working on a firewall vendor which whose name is not there, basically that means that you should, start learning some vendor from these four. Okay, now why is this important? See, most of the times and the technical guy is not the decision maker completely. Okay, so what happens is, if you start working on some vendor which is not being utilized in the companies much, the chances are that you will be jobless in time of crisis, especially, like, when there is different uh, situations like that. Okay, like if you look at them, the further somebody is here, it is better. So I'm not debating on whether Palo Alto Networks is number one or not, but you can say that at least these four people will be one, two, three, four. Let's not order them in any order. Okay, let's just keep them without any order. Okay, so these four people will be one, two, three, four. Now that means that these four vendors are what is being deployed in the companies right now. And if you know all four of them, then there is no way that you can be uh, without a job. Okay, so we deliver training on all these four time editor, but I'm just saying, like, if you continue Google searching this for the previous years, like 2017, then 2016, 2015, you'll find out that there was a time, if you just go back in time searching this Magic Quadrant, you'll find that there was a time when Palo Alto Networks came in. It innovated so much that even Cisco had gone away from market leaders into challengers. Okay, so the market leaders is uh, who are being sold a lot, and features wise who are having the most features out of all these different vendors. Then these are small time players. Okay, and these are who may get into challengers and leaders. So okay, I hope I've made myself clear. Okay, so next let's talk about Palo Alto certifications. Okay, so basically there are these three certifications that Palo Alto gives. Okay, and I'll tell you, it's not necessary. Like it's not like, don't think this is like CCNA, CCNP, and CCI. A lot of people start thinking that this is like that. No, it's not like that. Frankly speaking, you know, in market there is demand just for this particular certification more. Okay, like some of the HR or technical people don't even know that these certifications exist. Okay, so not so popular, these two are not so popular, and there is a reason for that. Okay, like if you look at this certification exam, okay, uh, it's kind of for, they've tried to make this for uh, you know, college fresh pass out people, or maybe people who have not worked into any kind of cybersecurity solution. So even if you look at the certification exam questions of this, it's like, you know, asking you questions whether you understand phishing, or whether you understand hacking, or whether you understand some basic things. Okay, like what is a firewall, what is VPN, those kind of things. And you know, so most likely, you know, this is of no use for anybody who is a working professional. Okay, and in here they start asking you certain things about firewall, but industry demands mostly, if you you know, if you look for job descriptions having Palo Alto certification asked for, most likely they will have PCNSE being asked for. Okay, so also there is no prerequisite, like it's not like you need to give this certification exam, then this, and then only you can go for this. It's not like that. You can directly before Cisco, now even Cisco has done this, but before even Cisco, Palo Alto had brought this concept that you can go for any certification directly without any prerequisite if you feel like. Okay, so from certification exam point of view, if you want to go for this certification exam. Okay, and we are going to cover mostly the topics related to this. Okay, and I'll not be able to touch Panorama, but Panorama, there are certain questions related to Panorama in the certification exam for this as well. So that I'll tell you from documentation where you can read it. Okay. From time to time, when I'm going to cover any topic, I'll tell you certain parts of documentation of Palo Alto. Okay, because since there is no Palo Alto press, okay, I'll tell you parts of, like, you know, read this 10 pages from here, read this 20 pages from here, and if you read them, it is best, because you know, then only you can get a strong foundation of Palo Alto. Okay. So let's start with the firewall basics. I'll quickly go through the firewall basics, like what is firewall. Okay, I hope most of you guys know. Okay, so basically any firewall is a network security system. Okay, that monitors what goes in and what comes out. Okay, so even traditionally, you know, firewall was not a word for network people. Initially it was for people who make homes. So firewall used to be the wall uh, of a room which had no windows or doors. Okay, so similar to that, even in network, we consider firewall is basically blocking everything by default until or unless you allow something by creating a security rule. Typically it sits on edge, of the network. Okay. Now there is also firewall for end devices, like you might have witnessed Windows firewall. Okay. So if you consider that, then there are two types of firewall: network firewall and host-based firewall. Now, our focus is not much on host-based firewalls because we are focusing on the network side. So, but host-based firewalls are the firewalls which run on end devices and have these like Windows, Linux, these operating systems having the firewall. Okay. If you talk about network firewall, evolution wise, there are three generations of firewall. Okay. And actually the firewall thing, like the Palo Alto firewall is kind of like an application aware firewall. Okay. But I'll just quickly brush through these first and second generation of firewall as well. Okay. Like first generation of firewall is just like when you used router to make access list. Okay. Now basically these were not regarded as firewall, like in even in Cisco environment. If you are old enough to remember, there was something called PIX. Okay. And PIX was actually not a firewall, it was basically a packet filtering device. Okay. And that's why I've kept router here. Okay. So you basically take a network device and you make permit deny rules to create rules in such a way that you allow certain thing or block certain thing. Now problem with this approach is uh, the device here which is being used for security does not have any state information. Okay. What is state information, or we'll discuss in this next slide. But point here is like it is not connection aware in a way that this guy has sent traffic out, that most of the traffic sessions are two-way. Okay. Like even if you uh, suppose I'm just trying to fetch a page. Okay. Or suppose I'm just trying to do telnet. Okay. Now when you do telnet, what happens is there is traffic going from here to here and then here to here. Okay. So kind of like if you consider, this is a single flow. Okay. Although the packets are flowing in two different directions. Okay. Now this is what we call being stateful or not being stateful. These devices like routers, they don't remember that, okay, this person went out, so return traffic, because in the return traffic the IP addresses and port numbers will be flipped, right? Like if the source IP is A and destination IP is B, for this traffic flow it will be flipped when the traffic goes in the reverse direction, right? Source IP will become B and destination IP A. But kind of they are part of one big conversation, right? But router doesn't consider it them these two traffic flows part of one conversation. Whereas with starting with firewalls, when you talk about the firewall devices, okay, they consider both of these flows into a single communication. So it's easier to make rules. Plus, at the same time, you don't have to unnecessarily, like suppose, I have deny any here as well as here. Then if I want to allow traffic from this PC A to reach to this server and come back, I need to make modifications here as well as here, right? Because this is not connection aware. Okay. So when a packet is received on a device, it can drop the packet, reject the packet, or permit the packet. Okay. Now, drop the packet silently means, like suppose a lot of times when you do ping, uh, if the security device is dropping the packet silently, okay, there can be many other reasons for uh, request timeout. But if suppose security device is dropping the traffic silently, you don't get a notification of ICMP back that your packet was denied. Like I'll give you an example, just to quickly remind you. Like if I try to ping something, okay, anything, Okay. Sometimes what you do is like when you try to ping, one is you get a reply from that IP address, right? This means everything is good. Okay. Sometimes when you ping some IP address, I'm just saying, like, suppose I ping something, and in reply, if you get destination host unreachable reply from this particular IP address. Okay. Now, when you get that, basically that means that whatever device you got reply from, it is sending you an ICMP notification that I don't have further route of that destination, or maybe it's denied. Okay. But sometimes what you get is you get a request timed out. Okay. If the security device is dropping the packet silently, you will get a request timeout. This we'll see even in while configuring security policy rules on firewall later. Okay. What's the difference? I'll try to open a packet capture and show you this. Okay. Now you can filter packet in a packet filter firewall based on source address, destination address, protocol number, port number. Okay. So basically it doesn't go till application layer to figure out the security. Okay. Then second generation of firewall, which is stateful firewall. Okay. In this kind of firewall, you basically maintain, the device maintains a state table. Okay. And the benefit of this state table is, like, suppose this guy goes out. Okay. It will maintain an entry that source IP A, destination IP whatever, B, source port whatever, suppose 10,000, destination port suppose 80. When it maintains this information, okay, the benefit is, if security policy allows it to go from this to this place, then the reverse traffic coming in, which will have source IP of B, destination IP of A, since firewall will recognize that the traffic belongs to the source port will be 80, destination port will be flipped, right? 10,000. Okay. Now, since firewall is going to recognize that this traffic flow which is coming back is for the same request that was made here, it's going to allow it. How does it know that? Because it maintains this information in the state table. Okay. So basically, the second generation can do all the things that the first generation packet filters can do. At the same time, it is basically aware of the conversation going on back and forth between the devices. Okay. So we also say that stateful firewalls are connection aware. Okay. Because of this, you can be a little bit more granular in configuring the security policy rules. Okay. Now, moving on, this is just for your reference, like what's the difference between a stateful and stateless. In a stateless firewall, each packet will be treated individually, because you don't maintain any information about connections. Okay. So most commonly, these packet filters are operating or filtering based on layer 3 information. Okay. And they only look at the header part. Okay. Now, problem with this is, sometimes if somebody initiates from outside and tries to get to your inside system, if it is allowed from the security rules or ACL, they might get through. Whereas in a stateful firewall, suppose I've made that people from inside will be allowed to go outside. If you make this rule, nobody can initiate a connection from outside and come in. The connection needs to be initiated from inside going to outside. then outside to inside is allowed. But if you directly initiate the connection from outside and try to come in, most likely that will be blocked. Okay. So stateful firewalls are connection aware. Now comes the third generation of firewall, application firewall, or like vendors like to market them as next generation firewalls. Okay. So basically, what is next generation about? A lot of times, suppose if you are trying to access something, any application, you might get a malware or something rogue in response to that. Problem is, since if you are using a second generation, firewall, the firewall will not recognize that malware or virus or something like that, and it will be delivered to the end device, which will basically spoil the whole uh, security. Okay. So what happens in an application aware firewall is it can understand certain protocols and applications. Like suppose if you try to access FTP services, okay, then if you try to if you get a response, or if you get something back which is not FTP, firewall itself will block it here. Okay. So this is useful in detecting unwanted applications. See, basically the attackers in a network have become sophisticated as well. Like uh, if if you talk about any attacker these days, they'll not um, how they can easily bypass firewall is they try to check which port is open on the firewall. Okay, like suppose we have kept TCP port number 80 open for HTTP traffic. Now, if you have kept this open, they can conceal or they can basically disguise their malicious traffic. Okay, something which is not allowed, and use the same port number so that your firewall just sends it across. Okay. Now, if you are having a firewall which can just go till a transport layer, okay, the problem is if you have some evasive thing which is utilizing the port number uh, which it is not supposed to use, the firewall will not know it. Okay. So like I was telling you, okay, the port number can be utilized, misused by some evasive applications. Okay. Now also notice this, that if you consider all of these applications, okay, like whether somebody is doing YouTube or Facebook or uh, WebEx, lot of these applications are good for business, and lot of these applications are not so good for business, like these. But if you see, most of these applications work either on port number 80 or 443. So if you are just making rules based on port numbers, there is a highly likely chance that it is going to be difficult to deploy security policies. Okay. So what next generation firewall will do for you is that it's going to it can do all the things that your stateful firewall can do. Okay, like packet filtering, NAT, stateful inspection, VPN. But what it does, it goes beyond transport layer and looks at the application layer to identify each of these application individually, and based on the pattern of data, it can identify, if suppose if you talk about torrent. Now any torrent application, what it does, it will check for whatever port number is open, it will utilize that to go out. Okay. So making rules based on port numbers is not so good thing for a for a modern network. Okay. So next generation firewalls can perform deeper packet inspection compared to the packet filtering and stateful firewall. Okay. So they can check the packet payloads and find any harmful activity and exploitable attacks in malware. Okay. Now, one way of deploying security, and a lot of companies still do it, is they have a firewall and they'll say we'll get a intrusion prevention system for security. We'll get a proxy server for a blue code proxy for something. We can deploy some antivirus solution. We can deploy identification of malware solution. We can deploy URL filtering solution, QoS solution, data loss prevention solution, and have multiple boxes for various different purposes. Okay. Now, problem with this approach is if you try to get out, see, if there is one packet that needs to get out, and if it goes through URL filtering, anti-malware, antivirus, data loss prevention, all these, the more the number of boxes here, each is going to look at the packet layer 3 header, so there is going to be significant delay for the packet to go out, right? More number of boxes you have, more delay will increase. This is when some people thought, or actually, Checkpoint came out with this term of having a UTM, Unified Threat Management. Okay. And what they did was they said, let's combine all of them together in a single box. Okay. And problem with that approach also is that if you have worked on Checkpoint, okay, they call all these different features blade. Okay, like each of these individual functionalities you enable, you need license for that, and you activate the blade. Okay, just a fancy word for activating a feature. Okay, now problem with that is if you ask any Checkpoint guy, the more number of blades you activate on the UTM, Unified Threat Management box, the delay significantly increases, and performance wise, the firewall performance, like CPU utilization increases, firewall performance sometimes degrades. Okay, so putting all of this in the same box is slow. Okay, now how Palo Alto has done is they have tried to solve this problem uh, by modifying the architecture here, okay, which we are going to discuss later. So now, why I'm discussing cyber attack lifecycle. See, a lot of features of Palo Alto they have deployed to mitigate the cyber attack. So, if you understand cyber attack a little bit, it's easier to understand why this prevents, or what this prevents, what that prevents. Okay. Now, basically, suppose I want to attack you, I'm an attacker. The basic cyber attack steps remain something like: first is reconnaissance, and reconnaissance is when what I'll do is I'll try to gather as much information as possible of the potential victim. Okay, like for example, if I'm trying to attack a company and I want to get information of who maintains the security. Okay, so I'll probably go to LinkedIn, try to find out people from Facebook, LinkedIn, all these social media accounts to know, okay, so and so person works as a security engineer for this organization. Now, once I get to know that, I might, try to find more information about that person, like what his likes are, what his dislikes are. Okay. Like suppose there's a security guy who likes cricket. Okay. Suppose I get to know this, then I can weaponize a file. Like I'm giving you an example. Suppose I weaponize a PDF file. Okay. And I add trojans or malwares in it, and something like that. And what I do is I try to find the email of the person and email this PDF to the security guy. Since I know he's a cricket enthusiast, I can email like, okay, 100 greatest uh, centuries of cricket history, or something like, something attractive, so that he opens up the email, downloads the PDF, or opens it. That is when basically I'll be able to deliver the whatever Trojan or malware I want to deliver, and which I can later exploit to do what I want. It can do an installation maybe on the system, create backdoor so that I can have access of the system. Then I can exchange some command and control traffic with their device. Okay, like maybe I'll take screenshots, maybe I'll do key logging. Okay, depending upon what my objectives are, I can maybe exfiltrate some data, and this goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so I hope you have the basic idea about now cyber attack lifecycle. So basically, research, identification, selection of targets, create some exploitable deliverable file. Okay, transmission of weapon to target. This is just the theory for same thing as I explained. Okay, now if you talk, we'll discuss the features of Palo Alto with respect to the cyber attack lifecycle later. Okay? So if you talk about like deployment options, okay, one way you can deploy firewall initially is if you don't suppose, uh, if you don't want to make a big commitment of getting Palo Alto in your network, what you can do is you can keep using your trusted whatsoever vendor you were using firewall. And Palo Alto people even use this, like their security engineers use this to show you what your traditional firewall is missing sometimes in their product demonstrations. What they are going to do is they are going to ask you that simply create a span port. Okay, if you know what is a span port, the span port is basically a port mirror. Okay, the span is what we call it in Cisco terms. Sometimes other vendors like to call it port mirroring, something like that. But the point is, like, they'll ask you that whatever comes in or goes out here, just send a copy of it here. For that, you will have to configure it on the switch. Okay, and similarly for this port, do it this. Now, if you look at this Palo Alto firewall here, it's a dead end of the network. You cannot go further outside anywhere through this, right? But they don't want to get you outside. They want to show you all the different kind of traffic that goes back and forth between your network. So because they want to convince you into buying their firewall, or basically they want to tell you what kind of applications your this traditional firewall is not able to identify. Okay, now when this guy sends any traffic, here on the Palo Alto, we'll just enable these interfaces. Okay, there is a particular interface type that you need to enable for it. We'll discuss that later. And once you enable that, the benefit of it will be you can enable logs. Whatever traffic comes in, you can, after 10-15 days, uh, the Palo Alto guys will ask you, say, see, you have torrent running on your system, on your systems in your network, or you have all these different applications. So they'll tell you all that from the logs of this. So this is just basically to show you the the power of Palo Alto firewall. Then basically, even if you have decided to deploy Palo Alto, the number one step would still remain, deployed like this, so that you have a fairly good idea what kind of security rules you will need to be making on the firewall. Okay. Then the second thing is transparent inline. Now, in Cisco ASA, we call it transparent firewall. Okay, and uh, in Palo Alto, they like to call it vWire. But the point here is simple. You keep your traditional firewall as it is, and now bring in this Palo Alto firewall. If you have a pair of firewalls, you're going to buy a pair of firewalls again for Palo Alto. And what you can do here is, like, whenever somebody comes in and goes out, you don't change any IP addressing scheme here. Okay, like if suppose this is a layer 3 interface with IP address on these firewalls, maybe running HSRBV or PGL, whatever it is. Okay, so default gateway for these people still remains this traditional firewall. It is just transparently, Palo Alto is transparently looking at all the traffic going back and forth, and you can slowly start utilizing now the features of Palo Alto, like maybe adding app ID along with the traditional firewall. And sometimes people who are there are some high security environments where they don't trust one particular vendor, then they sometimes have two layers of firewall. Like they'll have two different vendors firewall, so that because even if there is some bug in this OS code, it's very unlikely that it will be in this other vendor firewall as well. So like I personally know, like one of my friend, he was working with some security organization. So they had like three layers of firewall. Like they had a Cisco, a checkpoint, and a Palo Alto. But the organization was like, working on national security and stuff like that. So, they needed that kind of security. So a lot of people stop at some where this after having multiple firewalls. Or if you want to go ahead and you trust Palo Alto with everything, then you can throw away this firewall, remove it, and replace it with basically the Palo Alto. Okay. So it's basically phase by phase how you deploy and remove your traditional firewall. Okay. Next, let's talk about uh, the approach Palo Alto has taken for security here. See, what Palo Alto says is that if you want to deploy security, you need to secure three things. You need to secure the cloud infrastructure because all of the enterprises are utilizing some form of cloud. You need to secure the endpoint, and you need to secure the network. Okay. If you secure all these three things, there is a good chance that you will have a more hardened security. Okay. If you leave one of these ends loose, there can be problems. Okay. And that particular point could be, exploited. So also what they like to say is that most of your security should be automated. Okay. I'll discuss how they automate some things here. Okay. It's not like about running scripts, but it's like how the device behaves. Okay. So for network security, they have made a next generation firewall. Okay. which you can utilize to have app ID, content ID, these kind of features. Okay, it will inspect all the traffic. Okay, and Palo Alto has this zero trust security model. Like they say that don't trust anything. Okay, or don't trust anybody and inspect everything. Now, sometimes maybe what happens is like you get something which maybe the firewall doesn't know really whether it is a threat or not. Okay, like suppose somebody tries to download a file which may be a spyware, which may not be a spyware. Then what you need is that you want to check with the threat intelligence cloud. Now, what is threat intelligence cloud? If you remember, we just said there is something called wildfire. What is wildfire basically? In wildfire, basically, this is your sandboxing solution from Palo Alto. They have in their premises deployed sandboxing solution to which you can submit files. What they are going to do is they are going to detonate these files in the wildfire sandboxing solution. Basically, suppose I try to download a file which may be a spyware or a malicious file. It can submit it to the cloud. Now, some people might get scared here, like, okay, why are my files getting out onto the cloud? It's optional. It's up to you to configure. If you don't want it, you can have a wildfire appliance on premises as well. We'll discuss that in detail when we discuss wildfire. But point here is that when you submit, if you submit the file to the wildfire cloud, uh, Palo Alto is going to run that in various different virtual machines that they have. They have Windows 7, Windows 10, they have Linux, they have Mac OS machines. They'll try to run that and give you basically a detailed report and a verdict on the file, like whether this file was really a spyware or whatever malicious it is. Or they'll also give you a detailed 20-25 page threat report, as in it's just like a forensic analysis having very detailed information, like what all things it did in their closed sandboxing environment. Okay, so it can block known threats, send unknown to cloud. Okay, also it is extensible to mobile and virtual networks. How simple? Suppose I'm working from home, you can have global protect. Okay, now if you don't know what global protect is, you might have heard of Cisco AnyConnect. Cisco AnyConnect is a VPN client that you run on the endpoint, right? All these days, if you are using Cisco, then you might have used that while working from home. So Global Protect is the remote access VPN solution from firewall, from Palo Alto firewall. Like they have these VPN client on all of the endpoints, so like for Windows, for Linux environment, or even for these mobile devices like iPad, iPhone, Android, and these devices. So this is so that you can extend the security to mobile devices. Okay, and ask them to send everything through the VPN, so that it's still, even if when they are outside of their company network, the security is still strong enough for them. Now, threat intelligence cloud, it's also giving you a community approach. Okay, like Palo Alto has taken a community approach to security, as in suppose I'm a customer A of Palo Alto, customer B, customer C. Now, what happens is, suppose if a new form of zero-day attack happens at my premises, if I share that threat intelligence with Palo Alto Cloud, what it is going to do is, it is going to share that threat intelligence or that method of attack information with the Palo Alto firewall devices at different other vendor, different other customer. Okay. Now, benefit of that is, suppose if even A gets compromised in some way, B, C, or D, these other customers, their devices will have the information beforehand, and a similar form of attack cannot happen there. So threat intelligence cloud is basically used to gather potential threats from network and endpoints. It will correlate the information and send it, disseminate this intelligence to other network and endpoints. Okay. Now, at this point, we have not discussed the endpoint security solution from Palo Alto. Okay. And frankly speaking, it's not that big a hit right now, but slowly it's progressing. Okay. See, on any endpoint these days, what you do is you have a antivirus, anti-malware, these kind of solution, right? Now, problem with that is your endpoint security solution will never talk to your firewall, right? So what happens is, suppose if I, instead of downloading a virus infected file, I bring a USB and plug it into the device, then there is no way that firewall could have prevented it, right? You need an endpoint security solution to prevent it. So what Palo Alto has started to do is, they have made something called traps. Okay. And it is an endpoint security solution, basically a client which you are going to install on the endpoint. Okay. The benefit of this is, this endpoint security solution is going to talk to a server. Okay, I'll not go into the details because this is out of the scope of this course, but it's going to talk to a server, enterprise security manager, which in turn will also share this same threat intelligence to the same cloud. So even if an endpoint gets infected, it's kind of like your endpoint security solution can talk to your firewall or network security solution. Okay. Also, the need for this is because sometimes what attackers are trying to do is, like, uh, suppose I write a malicious file, a code, and what I do is I program it in such a way that, okay, this code will be triggered if Sudhanshu logs in to the system. Now suppose if you even capture this file on the firewall and you run it in the threat intelligence cloud VM, it's not going to do anything there. Why? Because it was programmed that trigger this malicious thing if the user logged in is Sudhanshu. Since the user logged in the threat intelligence cloud will not be Sudhanshu, it won't be triggered. So that's why we need an endpoint security solution which should share threat intelligence. Okay. So it can also integrate with the cloud to prevent known and unknown malware. Okay. So what are some of these other things that we have here? In the next generation security platform, we have Panorama. Okay. Like I told you, if you have a lot of firewalls, what you can do is you can utilize Panorama, and as an admin, you can open the HTTPS UI of Panorama, there these devices will be added already, and you can make device groups of them. Like suppose this is Indian firewall, this is maybe our UK firewalls, and like that you can have device groups. And what happens is, whatever security policies or things you create on the Panorama, they get pushed to these firewalls. So what you can have is, you can have a global SOC team, maybe working to deploy security from Panorama and maintain maybe global security policies. Like there are some uh, things which you don't want anywhere in your network to happen. Like example, like you don't want drug abuse websites or adult content websites to get opened anywhere on any site of the company. So if you deploy it through Panorama, it's already being pushed to all these different firewalls. So whatever policy they want to deploy, they can easily deploy it from a centralized uh, point. Also, see, sometimes people have this confusion. They think, uh, does this need to be attached to Panorama? No, it need not to be physically attached to Panorama. Okay, it's just that the communication will be encrypted. This is just to show you that encrypted communication is going to happen between the firewall and Panorama. And another good thing about this is, you can have all the logs, all the reports, monitor. You can check it from one place. So you don't have to take access of all these different firewalls to check them individually. Okay. So you can have simplified, powerful policy and greater visibility into all these firewalls working in all these different branch offices. Another good thing about Panorama is the UI, or the page through which you manage. This page is of Panorama, but when you will look at the page of firewall through which we manage firewall, you'll see the same option: monitor, policies, objects, network, device. Obviously there won't be Panorama, but these dashboard, ACC, all these options are same available on even Palo Alto firewall. So what happens is, when you have hold of managing firewall UI, you can easily make policies on Panorama as well, because the learning curve is not different. Like you don't have to learn a whole new user interface to get to know configuration of Panorama. Okay. Also, there is something called autofocus. Okay. And what autofocus will do is, all the threat intelligence that your Palo Alto is going to collect, autofocus is going to show you all of that threat intelligence, whether from your endpoints or whether from other customers, in a consolidated way on a web portal. Okay. See, what happens is, lot of times your information security team wants to know information like, okay, how many malware download sessions are happening in our company, how many malware download sessions are we capturing and catching. Now these kind of things, which are basically required more for security management team, what you can do is, you can basically directly have them all at one place. Like, see, read this. It gives security operations and analysis team direct access to all threat intelligence Palo Alto gathers from open source feeds, as well as Unit 42. Unit 42 is their threat research team. Okay. Like, I'll show you. If you go ahead and by their autofocus service. This is what the autofocus dashboard looks like. Now, if you see, this is basically taking you where? It's taking you to the Palo Alto Networks website. Once you log in there with your account, you can see all the details for your organization or your industry. Like maybe, we are in retail industry, or we are in education industry, or we are in hotel industry, hospitality industry. You can see your industry, or you can see all. If you look at your organization, it is going to show you all the top applications that were being used, like SMTP, web browsing, what kind of applications, what are the top malware, what are the top firewall in terms of traffic. So basically, it will give you all the threat intelligence related stuff which is required for the security management team. Like you cannot deploy any policy using autofocus. See, there is no option to create any policy, right? So this is just so that you can have a one single portal through which you can, look at all the threat intelligence gathered. Okay. Fine. So next, I'll just introduce you to IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Okay. Why I'm SaaS introducing you to this? Okay. For fun sake, you can say SaaS. Okay. Instead of SaaS. Now, there is a security solution from Palo Alto called Aperture, which is now renamed to Prisma. Okay. And it's a solution for software as a service solutions. Okay. It's a security solution for that. Okay. That's why I'm discussing this quickly. See, basically, if you talk about the enterprise legacy IT, okay, you deploy everything like data center, networking, like routers, switches. You deploy the storage, SAN solution, server. Then you deploy the VMware or Hyper-V, whatever virtualization solution you want. Then your operating system, Windows, Linux. You install databases, deploy security, and then finally you deploy application. So basically, in this, everything is managed by the customer. Compared to this, you can use AWS, which is both platform as a service as well as infrastructure as a service. Amazon Web Services, if you utilize that, what you can have is you can have this thing. If you use it as an infrastructure as a service, you will not care about what kind of servers, whether they have used Dell servers or HP servers. You don't care. You don't care about the storage. You don't care about the networking, how it is getting corrected, up and running data centers and everything. You basically utilize your operating system, Windows, Linux, whatever you need. You deploy all these things. Okay. If you use platform as a service, they have even in AWS, they have pre-built uh, solutions or template. Suppose like I want a SQL server, then they are going to have all the things related to that for me in a template, and I can directly run that. Okay. So I can just deploy my application and I don't need to manage anything related to this. Like suppose if operating system needs updates or anything else, that's their headache. That's not my job. Okay. Now, then there is something called software as a service. And like when you use, suppose Google Sheets, okay, or when you use Google Drive even, do you care where they have saved? How is it networked? Do you care about which servers they have utilized, whether they have deployed virtualization using VMware or Windows? No, you just go and put your data and start using the application. So that's what we call as software as a service. Okay. Now, a lot of companies are utilizing software as a service, and they need some form of security in their SaaS applications as well. Like if you talk about Aperture, this was the old name for it. What it can do, now they have renamed it to Prisma Access. Okay, it can check your SaaS applications for managing permissions, and also you can use it to scan files for external exposure and sensitive information. Okay, like what it can do for you is, suppose in your some SaaS solution you have PII information, personally identifiable information. Suppose we collect information uh, like Aadhaar card, PAN card, these iCard related information from our customers. Now you can have Aperture to scan that, if whether it is getting exfiltrated, and you can make policies and permissions from one single solution. Okay. Now see, this is what an Aperture dashboard looks like, and Prisma dashboard is even similar. Okay. Now if you see here, you can add a cloud application. Okay, you can add a cloud application here, like Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever cloud application, and you can manage all the permissions from one single solution. Okay, so you don't have to learn about all these different uh, SaaS applications. Okay, it can also do scanning for malware and stuff. It will also give you information about who are the top collaborators, and uh, how many compliance issues we can have, or from the past 7 days what is happening, who are the trusted users, untrusted users, whether they have reduced or. Okay, so one single place to have. Okay, next let's talk about Global Protect. Okay, like I told you, this is basically the remote access VPN solution from Palo Alto. Okay, so what you can have is, you can deploy your firewall as a Global Protect gateway, and you can have Global Protect app on the end devices which want to connect to our resources, our company resources. And what happens is, VPN tunnel gets established between the Global Protect app and the Global Protect gateway. What is the job of Mobile Security Manager? I'll discuss this when we discuss Global Protect in detail later. Okay, so you can have PC, smartphones, or tablets with Global Protect app to establish SSL VPN connection to firewall with best performance for a given location. Like this is something not which doesn't happen with Cisco. Like in Global Protect, what they do is, when you first establish a connection, you'll get a list of firewalls. Suppose you get A, B, C, 3 firewalls. Now your Global Protect app will get connected to that particular firewall whose response time or whose round trip time is least. The benefit of that is, sometimes, suppose I'm a end user working from Pune. Now, if suppose I don't want or maybe I've moved to suppose Sydney. Okay, now if our company has an office in Sydney, it's better to get connected to the Sydney firewall because the delay will be lesser compared to Pune firewall. So firewall will basically check for best performance for any given location, and based on the delay, it's going to connect to the nearest firewall geographically. Okay, fine. Now, this is where we'll start from tomorrow. Okay, and if you guys have any questions of anything that we discussed in today, also I'll introduce like how we are going to do lab. But if you have any questions till now. Any questions?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am having one question. It's like then Panorama is basically used for pushing the policies. Then can we get a brief idea like how we are going to do it in Palo Alto? Like you told that you are not going to demonstrate it. Yeah. For Panorama.
I'll discuss some things related to Panorama. See, I cannot show you practically because if I add firewalls and push configurations, they have made it expensive because they know that Panorama is a solution which people will require who have a lot of firewalls, right?
Yeah, but like
So I'll
here,
discuss.
how we
I'll
will do in our
discuss
labs.
overview.
Then how we will do in these labs? How we will push the policies?
Panorama for labs is mostly not available.
No. Like in
Okay.
our practice session, what we are going to use for pushing the policies?
No, we are going to directly configure firewall, not push them through Panorama. See, Panorama is not for everyone.
Okay.
Panorama is mostly for people who have a lot of firewalls. I can open the firewall UI directly and manage firewall from there.
Yes.
It's not necessary to have Panorama.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I can open firewall user interface directly to manage and create security policies and everything. That we are going to do.
Okay. So we are going to do on UI based.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
See, Palo Alto's approach to this has been like people should do configuration through GUI. And frankly speaking, for certification exam as well, you will have to prepare for GUI. In the lab workbook, we have included CLI related stuff. Especially, I'll tell you one of the biggest reasons for that is Baldev, Baldev likes CLI a lot, who has contributed a lot in that firewall lab workbook. And secondly, there are still some people, even like me, who like CLI more. Okay, so you can deploy a lot of everything that you can configure using web portal of Palo Alto. You can deploy that using CLI. But since Palo Alto doesn't want people to learn much of the CLI, there is very limited documentation available for CLI. In fact, uh, we have included more CLI in the lab workbook, but a lot of those commands are not available. You'll not easily find them in these Palo Alto documentation. Okay.
Okay.
Palo Alto just gives you very basic of CLI.
Even I have seen in my company, we are using for basic checking CLI.
Yeah, but for configuration, most of them expect that there will be GUI.
Yes. For basic troubleshooting, like checking the alarms and everything, we go through CLI. So can we practice on that also for checking the alerts? Can you
Yeah, see, you have. I'll show you some CLI commands, some basic CLI commands I'll show you. And you can even continue with the lab workbook and look at the, like, see, we have included a lot of labs in the lab workbook. It's not practically possible to show each and every lab, but if you just follow the lab workbook, it includes all the even smallest details in there. Like for some things are out of the scope of certification exam. Like they don't expect that you'll know how to run BGP on Palo Alto Firewall. Okay. But suppose you are in a service provider environment and you have to run BGP on Palo Alto Firewall, then you can follow the lab workbook and gain your base knowledge for all that.
One more question I want to ask is that
Yeah.
basically like what how can we configure it? Will be like using a VMware workstation for practice or practice?
See, mostly I'll utilize Eve NG. Okay, Eve Next Generation is software. It's kind of like GNS, but not exactly like GNS.
Okay.
It contains a lot of images for various things, but the point is like it's very CPU intensive. Okay, I'll show you. So generally, it's recommended that you run this setup in a server. Although I'm running it on the laptop, but you know, even my laptop gets heated up pretty quickly sometimes because of this. But like preferably, it is recommended that you run it on a server. Okay. For your basic practicals, if you have like 16 GB of RAM, okay, and I would say preferably four cores of CPU, it should work for all these basic things.
Okay.
Okay.
Sudhanshu, can we get your
See,
number?
what happens is, yeah, I'll share that.
Okay.
I'll show you the Eve setup. Okay. See, Arjun, I'll tell you frankly, preferably, what, tell me about yourself a little bit, like what things have you studied and like what have you done? Mhm. Okay. See, don't think I'm trying to discourage you in any way, okay? But generally speaking, you won't find many job opportunities for fresher with Palo Alto firewall knowledge, okay? Like, see, why you are doing this? It's very simple. You want a job, right? If I tell you you can study 2 years of uh, this networking and security and everything, but you will not get a job in networking, you will be like, why should I study then, right? So I'm not saying. Mhm. Yeah, it can be. See, you can go through the course. You should be able to understand I would say 80-90% of the stuff. I don't think if there is any issue, you can discuss that with me particularly, like individually even. Like if you are a little bit unclear on something, you can ask that. But generally speaking, most of the times in this course, there are working professionals. Okay, if you want to do it for knowledge sake, you are most welcome to do it. Okay, but I'm just setting the expectation clear. Okay, because uh, yeah, like I'll tell you, like around 6 months back, I got three people from Gujarat. They were students, last year students. Somebody had told them, not from iMedica, but like somebody like their cousin or somebody working had told them that do Palo Alto Firewall and you will get the job. So they came, they enrolled, and they were like, no, we have to do it because we know it's like that, ultimate holy grail of like Amrit. I'll drink it and I'll become like uh, the job guy. So that's why I'm setting this expectation clear. Okay, because once they attended all the training and everything, then they felt like uh, even some of them are still in touch. We didn't get a job because of that. That relative guy misled us. I told them in the beginning. Even. So I'm just clarifying that. Okay. If you're doing it for knowledge and having an additional thing to write in your resume, it's good. No problem.
Sudhanshu, one more question I'm having.
Yeah.
Like wherever I'm working, till now, like we don't have any write access. We only have a read access. So, like, can we have add-on doing this lab?
See, I'll show you how we are going to do lab. That
Okay.
will clarify a little bit. What configuration of laptop do you have? Yeah.
I'm having HP laptop Core i5 octa core and 8 GB of RAM.
Okay. Fine. You should be able to run with performance issues because of the RAM. Okay.
Okay.
Because see, Palo Alto individually takes around 4 GB of RAM. Okay. And two cores of CPU.
Okay.
So, like, I'll show you. Like, this is the typical setup that I use. Now, if you look at this, in this, there is two Windows machines. Okay. You can replace them with a VPCS so that, you don't consume lot of core. Okay. Because for me, one core of CPU goes for this Windows, another core goes for this. Then there is two core of CPU which go for Palo Alto. So all in all, when I run this setup, four core of CPU are gone. Okay, I can afford to do that because I have 8 cores. Okay, plus at the same time, this Windows 7 machine is going to consume uh, 2 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM, another 4 GB RAM. So that's 8 GB of RAM. Okay, but you can do some practicals by just having VPCS node instead of this Windows machine. There is this virtual PC simulator, which you might have used in GNS. It doesn't consume any extra RAM or something like that. It's very simple. You can just ping and do your stuff for this. Okay. So you can utilize VPC instead of Windows, and you should be able to. I'll help you out in building that lab. Okay. Okay, so mostly we'll be utilizing this. Now there are some features which you cannot test unless you have license. For that I'll utilize a licensed firewall, but that I cannot uh, share in, like, even if I give you a copy of it, it will not work. Okay, because it is binded to a particular CPU ID and the MAC. So there are very less configurations where particularly license is required.
Okay, we can be.
I'll be showing you all that. Yeah.
Okay, then we can be using in classrooms, right?
Yeah, I'll use it in classroom to show you the practical. Okay.
Okay, like
But
after the
the thing
lockdown
is,
gets.
like, I cannot share it for lab, like for your lab. Okay.
Okay. No, but like when we complete this lockdown is completed, and when we will join for a classroom session, that time we can use, right, in
Yeah.
branch.
Then it's not an issue.
Okay.
If this lockdown gets over. So you can continue online. See, a lot of times previously, even what has happened is there were some people online, there were some people in the classroom, but now everybody is online because of lockdown. Fine. Any other question?
Sir, this is Pankaj. Just regarding lab environment, how will the practice and the practice we have to
I
install?
just discussed, I think you were dropped from the meeting at
Yeah,
that time. I will practice on Eve.
yeah, that I know. How we will get access, remote access, or like which way you'll be able to get access for this?
आपके पास Eve है ना शायद नहीं
हाँ, Eve है, but issue है कि थोड़ा
नहीं configuration.
हाँ configured है, system पे configured है Eve.
So I'll help you out in, like, setting up if there is something required for, like,
But I think
कोई issue आया है,
RAM, I have
तो
only 8 GB RAM in my system. So will it work or?
preferably if you can increase it, it will be performance wise, it will be better. But चल जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं चलेगा. But the thing is, like, something that might take 5 minutes for some practical, for you it might take 10-12 minutes.
Okay.
Like
क्योंकि आपका Windows भी वो खाएगा ना, like,
हाँ, Windows आएगा बहुत
and
ज़्यादा.
then
और इस time पे
we are
RAM.
working actually on a lab solution,
Okay.
online lab solution, but वो अभी it's not yet finalized. Plus even that got delayed because of this lockdown. Deployed and implemented that online lab access solution till now.
Okay. Okay.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Fine. Bye bye.